Good afternoon, all, and thank you so much for joining us for another Secret Sunday session today. Today, I am joined by Renee, all the way from France, so welcome. And today, we're going to talk a lot about relationships and start that conversation around what is a healthy relationship. Before we get into that, I wanted to ask Renee who you are and what it is that you do.
So I am a professional dating and relationship coach, and I started in the industry. I actually started back in 2013, had absolutely no plans to become a coach. I literally started with a blog because I was in a relationship with a man who had a child to a previous wife. And this was around the time where dating apps, online dating, dating someone with children, all of that was still kind of taboo and no one really talked about it. And so I wanted to start a blog that spoke about what it was like to now date, what it was like to create a relationship, I guess, in the 21st century and what not to do, because I was definitely an expert in like what not to do. And from there, that ended up being the #1 dating and relationship blog in Australia and top 30 in the world. I ended up writing for some of the biggest publications, giving out dating advice, biggest dating sites and dating apps, Huffington Post, eHarmony. And that led me eventually to have people ask me to coach them. So I then started curating programs for women and coaching hundreds of women around the world. And it was all just something that just led one thing to the next. And to be honest, I basically sucked at love before I became good at it. I struggled with it for about 10 years in and out of broken relationships, dating narcissists, doing the wrong thing, dating the wrong guys, constantly struggling with my identity, my self-esteem. And I got to my breaking point. And when I hit my breaking point, that's when I realized, I'm the common denominator. Something needs to change in my life. And when I did, everything rapidly changed. And I met my husband, and I've been teaching women ever since how to have that fundamental love education to set them up for success and love.
Yeah, wow. And you talk a lot about, even on your social media pages, self-sabotage in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a key factor in order to have a healthy relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I think self-sabotage is something that we don't do on purpose. It's something that subconsciously we do because of what we've been exposed to when we're younger or what we're just not aware about. I think, love education, which is essentially what I do, is something that we're not taught. We're not taught in schools. We're not taught usually by our parents. We just kind of learn as we go, and we usually don't have the best learning mechanisms because we're like, oh, I'll just go on this date, or I'll just do this, or I'll just, not put that boundary down because we don't know about boundaries. And so we're creating this culture of self-sabotaging unconsciously because we don't have that awareness, so we don't have that love education. And I believe that there's only two reasons why people struggle in love, and that's either you're doing the wrong thing or you're dating the wrong person. And those are both forms of self-sabotaging.
Yeah, wow. And I guess we talk a lot about the ideal relationship and what that is. In your opinion, what is the ideal relationship?
The ideal relationship is funny because I think as women, as we grow up, we have this like Disney picture in our head of, we get swept off our feet. He brings us roses all the time. He's the masculine man and he's chasing us, and we're the damsel in distress. And we've almost over romanticized the idea of love and put it on a pedestal, hence why a lot of us feel like it's out of our reach, or we have to be somebody awesome in order to be able to receive an awesome love. I say that there's, again, two things that I guess clarify whether or not the relationship that you're in is healthy, and that is there is peace and there is progress. And that's just a really simple way to know, okay, well, this is a relationship that obviously has the fundamentals because I feel at peace within myself, meaning I can be authentic with myself and I feel at peace with that person. And of course, progress. One of the 6 human factors that we need is progress. We need to be moving forward. If we're not moving forward, we're either dying, we're stagnating, or we're going backwards. And to be able to have progress, you need to have the fundamentals there. And the ideal relationship is definitely something that is easy to a degree. Whilst relationships take hard work, that hard work should only be in seasons. And that hard work should always be producing some sort of growth. You shouldn't be constantly striving in your relationship.
Yeah, wow. And I guess as well, we talk a lot about in this generation the new dating environment where everything is online. You're meeting a lot of new people online. Do you think that fits into you can find a healthy relationship with finding someone online?
Yeah, look, I think obviously we're influenced by what's going on nowadays. And it's not just online dating and dating apps and the swipe culture. It's also social media has greatly affected communication, the way that we meet people, the way that we interact, our expectations, technology in general, the rate that technology is advancing, we have a more disposable attitude. We just kind of want a quick fix, and if it's broken, we throw it away. Sort of mentality creep in. We are also a generation that comes from a lot of divorce. We are a generation that has a lot of role model change where the females are now, you know, the breadwinners and the men aren't necessarily always the breadwinner in the relationship. So there's a lot of different factors that, I guess, influence us consciously and subconsciously, who we choose and how we respond in a relationship. But I think, you know, online dating and dating apps have been painted as something really bad, which isn't necessarily true. The same people who are in the grocery store, at the bar, or at the restaurant, or at the coffee shop where you want to meet in real life are the same people who are on online dating and dating apps. However, we see them completely different because one, we have direct access to, and we can literally see, okay, they're searching for a relationship. So we have a different expectation attached to that, as opposed to just the cute guy at the coffee store that we're like, oh, I wonder if he's single and I'd like to be able to go and talk to him. And so it's our expectations that we attach to online dating and dating apps that then affect how we handle the whole culture of that and the level of success that we have. And a lot of people assume that, okay, because I have access to dates, therefore I should just have access instantly to people who want to treat me right, or I should have access to love. And it's not necessarily that way. You know, dating apps and online dating are purely just a medium to be able to meet someone. And of course, you can use that medium more successfully in certain ways than other ways. However, we shouldn't be blaming them, because at the end of the day, we're responsible for who we choose to interact with and how we interact on that app as well.
Oh, I completely agree. I feel as well the dating apps get a really bad rap because I know in my circle experience, it's can be quite degrading as a woman to go onto those apps, and sometimes you get comments or you get messages sent from guys that only want one thing, and that desire is sex. And I find that's what puts a lot of people off the dating apps because it is a very sex-driven platform.
I think it depends which app you use. I mean, Tinder does have the reputation for being, you know, the hookup app, but don't forget Tinder is also the largest app out there. So it's also a numbers thing. The more people that are on it, the more likely you're to get those sort of messages. You know, what's crazy is that it's more direct. You know, the fact that a certain guy, let's say, wanted sex with a girl, you know, who's to say that even if you went on a couple of dates or even just one date with him and say you met him in real life, he wouldn't still say the same and insinuate the same. It's just because he's done it directly through an app without you actually meeting him first and having that first level of human connection that you're like, oh, you know, all men want is sex. For sure, like I said, we're in a fast-paced culture here, you know, going on apps, again, having access, people believe that it gives them some sort of permission to skip a stage in between, which is the wooing, the courting, the time, the pace, all the sort of traditional stuff that would naturally come when you met somebody in real life because you're actually there face to face. And there's also a certain level of accountability when you're face to face. For example, we hide behind our screens. There's certain things that we feel maybe more confident to be able to do and say because we're not there in front of that person, feeling that energy and having their direct reaction to what it is that we're saying. And then because, you know, females use Tinder to hook up as well as males, they start to get into this idea that, oh, this is okay. It's okay for me to be direct, that I only want sex, or it's okay for me to be just super casual about it. But statistically speaking, more people are on apps to actually find a proper relationship than there are people on there for casual sex.
Yeah, wow. And I guess as well, when we talk about the dating apps and the digital environment of dating, do you think that because the focus is so much on the initial physical attraction, that that's a bad thing?
No, I think it's completely normal. I mean, let's just pretend dating apps don't exist, for example, okay, and you go out there and you see a guy or you see a girl, and what do you see? You literally see them visually, right? And you're either attracted to them or not. That's no different to what you have on apps. And I think that we lose perspective on that. Everyone's like, oh, it's all just about looks. Not necessarily. The only way that it's about looks is in the algorithms. If you are better looking, you are going to be pushed to the top. So that's a little bit biased on the apps part, but of course they're a business at the end of the day. Or if you get more attention, then your profile gets pushed to the top as well. Obviously, if you have beautiful photos, or if you're somebody that is highly attractive, you're more likely to get more attention, hence why you're more likely to, in the algorithm, going to be pushed to the top and also be matched with other better looking people as well. It's pretty funny, like when you look at the back end of all of that. But this is also a reflection of what happens in real life. A girl who is, let's say, a Victoria's Secret model, okay, she walks down the street, she's probably going to have a lot more guys attracted to her because visually she's quite pleasing to the eye. And same if we see a gorgeous guy walk down the road, as women, we're going to look at him and go, oh, wow, he's, you know, really cute, or he's really attractive, as opposed to maybe someone that's less attractive on whatever scale people have. It's just a normal human thing. And it's not something that we need to feel guilty about or something that we should shame. It's something that, you know, at the end of the day, everyone has a different level of attraction. What's more important is after the initial attraction, the conversation that you have in order to understand and assess somebody's character. But I think that, you know, as long as we can see beyond that initial attraction, start to read their profile and interact with them, it does give us a better chance to work out, okay, is this somebody who I should be dating? But in the beginning, I think the whole attraction physical thing is completely human and completely normal.
Yeah. Do you think with the introduction of technology and the digital environment that the lack of communication is becoming a big issue amongst your patients, amongst society, because it is so digital dominant?
I think communication has always been an issue. I think that definitely has changed. We have got more ways to communicate than ever, and we still have a massive communication breakdown. You see, having access to apps, what I find personally from my clients and just people around the world is they get really frustrated because they start a conversation with somebody and then it doesn't evolve into a date. It doesn't get offline. And we've become a very let's communicate online generation. We're communicating on social media, we're communicating on the dating apps, you know, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. And we're not actually having old school phone calls again, or actually escalating things and going, well, I want to get to know about you in person rather than through a screen. I have met people and clients who literally have been in a long distance relationship with someone, even got engaged to someone, and they've been communicating for a year, but they've never even met in person just once. So, you know, it's definitely something that I think we've lost a little bit of perspective on that, because I have, again, direct access to you through some sort of means. Therefore, we have in our head, well, that kind of compensates for me not having to see you in person as much or as often or as soon on as what I need to in order to be able to get to know you. communication breakdown. See, I look at my nan's generation, and I think there's still a communication breakdown back then, because a lot of stuff was swept under the rug. There was a lot of issues that needed to be spoken about, like women's rights, or, you know, women just feeling they have more value in the household, or family secrets that, oh, well, don't talk about that because, you know, it's not socially acceptable. So it wasn't talked about. And then you have the generation after that where all of a sudden, okay, they did start to communicate and vocalize things, and divorce started to happen. And, you know, but then why is divorce happening? Is again because there's a communication breakdown. And then we look at our generation now, or my generation, millennials, and we've seen internet being invented. We've seen mobile phones being invented. We've seen social media being invented. So we've been here in a digital age, but we've also been in the non-digital age as well. So we've got a little bit of an understanding, okay, well, how can we meld the two together so that we're not having a complete communication breakdown? But then you get the generation after us, which has just had complete digital the whole time. So their communication style is different. So I think depending on who the person is, either way, the whole world needs to know how to communicate more effectively. I think that's the key. We have communication, we just don't know how to do it effectively.
Yeah. And if we look at values in a relationship, and you mentioned at the start how most power within a relationship between a male and a female has adapted and altered, where females could become the breadwinner in the relationship. Has that impacted as well relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a massive role reversal, obviously, as women have started to gain their voice and come into power, which is obviously positive to a degree. But I think at times it's been taken too far, where it's actually emasculated and devalued men. And I've seen a lot of identity crises within men, knowing where they fit in now, knowing where their role is, because naturally they're the leader, or naturally they're the one who is meant to be the head. And I don't mean the head as in anything saying that men are better than women. I just mean it's a natural sort of thing for men to go out, provide, protect, all of that. So the women's more the nurturer and the gatherer. And women have almost taken this level of empowerment to a level of self-entitlement. And it's why I get a lot of male clients, you know, really find it, they struggle with being able to find a woman who has that balance between that masculine and feminine energy, where she's still her independent, beautiful, empowered self. She can earn more than him. He doesn't care about that. But not to a degree where she feels that she needs to compete with him, or she's better than him because she's a woman. And that has become a little bit of a toxic feminism, you know, kind of rebuttal to the toxic masculinism that was going on. And I believe that real feminism and real masculinism isn't toxic at all. So it's kind of a bit of an oxymoron. But I do see a lot of women who are, say, you know, going into their 30s, going into their 40s, and they've put their career first. And they've learned to kind of be self-sufficient without a man, yet at the same time they do want a man. But then they struggle to be able to know, well, how can I find that balance between still being this independent, empowered woman and still being the feminine woman that I need to be in a relationship for a relationship to be able to have the balance that it needs.
Yes. So how can a woman do that? How can she be her authentic, independent self, as well as, it sounds awful, but fitting her role in a relationship so that the man can feel valued as well?
I think that, you know, it's important to maintain your identity. And as long as your identity isn't done in insecurity, because what I find is that women who are overly independent, women who are overly, say, masculine, are women who have some sort of emotional avoidance. And then they either attract men that have emotional avoidance, or they attract weaker men who can't handle them. And then they walk all over them. Or they realize they end up losing their place because they're chasing this guy who was never emotionally available, but she wasn't emotionally available. And obviously that, who she is and that part of her character is stemmed in some sort of hurt or trauma or insecurity from her past. So having a real good understanding and self-awareness is really the key to be able to have that balance, to be able to know, okay, am I somebody, you know, when I get into a relationship, I feel that I need to compete with them because I'm actually doing that to protect my heart because I'm scared of getting hurt. So what she'll do is she'll go more into her masculine, or she'll be really hard, or she'll set her standards really high, and a guy will feel like he constantly has to strive to be able to meet her requirements. Or am I the sort of woman where I put so much focus on my career and, you know, everything that I've got going on in my life, that I'm doing it because, you know, as soon as a man comes in, I lose myself, right? And so that level of self-awareness gives you then and a little bit of a blueprint, let's say, or a little bit of a GPS system to know, okay, where do I maybe need to surrender instead of always trying to control? Because my control is based in fear of getting hurt, fear of a man leaving me because maybe I had my father leave me, fear of me losing my identity because I fought so hard for my career. Where do I need to understand that in order to build a healthy relationship that has that beautiful balance between masculine and feminine energy, that I can be softer, or I can surrender, or I can choose to be vulnerable and trust the person that I'm with, that he isn't going to hurt me. And of course, you don't just blindly trust someone, or you don't just blindly surrender to someone. Having awareness or love education also comes into knowing that person's character, so that you're not becoming attached to somebody that is going to hurt you, and then you're just repeating the cycle and solidifying this negative conviction.
Yeah, wow. It's beautiful when you put it like that, and how we can attract people based on our emotional responses that we often don't think about that at all. I want to talk a little bit about commitment, because I know in the younger generations and in my own experience, it's been hard to find someone to date or even get to know when there's this big commitment gap. People don't want commitment. They find that it's too hard to be in a relationship. Do you find that in your practice, that people don't want to commit to relationships?
I think people are searching for commitment, and it's the ultimate thing that they do want, but they're definitely finding it difficult to make it a reality. And a part of that, again, is just we're not taught this stuff. We're not taught, and we're so focused on the commitment that we don't really look at, okay, well, what actually brings commitment here, which is, you know, knowing someone's character, knowing someone's default, which is basically who they are when they're not on their best behavior, knowing what men need in a relationship to want to have the desire to commit to a woman, knowing what a woman needs in a relationship for her wanting to be able to commit to a man, knowing how to pace yourself through a relationship so that you can create that tension and create that progress to continue to move forward to the next level, where commitment becomes a byproduct. Commitment shouldn't necessarily be something that we make, you know, such a massive goal that that's all we focus on. You know, I've had certain clients that I've actually turned down, so they haven't become clients, I guess, say to me, oh, can you guarantee to find me a husband? I'm like, that's not how I work, you know. I'm not a matchmaker, and even then, I you know, whilst I think matchmakers are another avenue to be able to find love, like, it doesn't solve your character problems or that character's problems, or the gap to be able to actually know what to do to build a healthy relationship. Commitment should just be a byproduct of a healthy relationship. So I think we need to take the shift of commitment, and we need to put the shift on, well, what are the fundamentals here of a healthy relationship? What do I need to do in the beginning stages of dating someone, of connecting with someone, so that I can start to actually identify whether or not they have the characteristics and the capacity to be able to give me a healthy relationship? And what am I doing? Because we're also accountable. We can't just keep blaming the men or the women, like, oh, all the women are too strong and too feminist nowadays, so that's why we don't want to commit. And we can't go, oh, all the men are too weak, or they're just players, that's why, you know, they don't want to commit to us. It's not a battle of the sexes here. It's about, okay, how can I learn about this so that I can set myself up to be the best version of myself, to encourage commitment from somebody else, to identify somebody who is on the same page as me, and then work together as a team to build this healthy relationship, which will automatically have the commitment involved in it.
Yeah. I think conversations in my community as well, a lot of young people will look at that and go, well, that's too hard to focus on one person and learn about someone, and they'd rather, quote unquote, go sleep around. Do you find that is also a conversation amongst young people that you're hearing?
I think definitely we're in the casual culture. I think that, and this is a stigma we need to to break. That is, love is hard and dating is hard. It's not meant to be. It's just that we've now decided it is, because we keep having the same sort of repetitive cycles. And that's why, again, I'm so passionate about it. What I do is because I'm trying to break that cycle, and I'm trying to re-educate literally a generation that it's not meant to be this difficult. And we believe it's hard because, again, we've got this expectation that because I've got access to someone through a dating app, it's just instantly should be as easy as what the access was.
Yeah.
And we've set ourselves up with this expectation that just isn't reality. And so people do what's convenient. Absolutely. We are a convenient generation. We are a quick fix generation. We are, this is too hard, so I'm not going to try. It's why divorces are so common. I think that, people react out of what they're influenced by and what they've experienced. But ultimately, I don't think people want to just sleep around. I think people are searching to love and be loved. However, their idea of that or their experience of that hasn't been successful, and it hasn't been easy, and it hasn't been the way that it's meant to go. So therefore, they do the more convenient or the easy option for them, which is just having sex or just keeping things casual, because what seems to be more acceptable nowadays as well. It's much more, again, easier to do. And it almost removes a level of accountability and responsibility when it comes to setting yourself up for a relationship that is healthy. You've got to do the work definitely within yourself.
Yeah.
And there needs to be some sort of discipline if you want to be able to set yourself up for a healthy relationship. But at the end of the day, it's going to be way more fulfilling and satisfying to be able to have that, as opposed to just casual hookups all the time. And the people who start off doing the casual hookups and say, oh, no, I don't care. Eventually they get to a point where they're like, I do care, and I've always cared, and I wish that I could have done things different.
Yeah, it does seem there is a turnaround eventually once people are sick and tired of that, I guess, period. And then as well with the feminism movement, do you find that it's hard now with relationships because I guess men can't say certain things and they can't be in rooms with women because of the whole Me Too movement? Has that shifted the way men and women connect?
I think that, yeah, I mean, it hasn't just been that, it's also been divorce. There was a really toxic sort of, I wouldn't say movement. I think there's just a toxic system letdown at the moment with divorce, where there are women who are taking everything from guys, and unrightfully so, their money, their children, and they're basically cleaning these guys dry. So guys are like, well, what's in it for me if basically marriage is something that could just ruin me? So then marriage has become the bad thing, when at the end of the day, it's the act of marriage is basically, well, who are you connecting with? Because that's what's key to what's going to give you a quality marriage. I think that, as I said, real feminism isn't toxic, just like real masculinism isn't toxic. It's something that is empowering. However, it has been given a toxic rap, and men are finding that women have become high maintenance instead of high value, and they've pulled back. Absolutely. They're like, well, I'm not appreciated. I do this. She's still not enough for her. So why would I continue to do more? And it's definitely become a battle of the sexes. I mean, you've got movements in the male sector, which is called MGTOW, which is men go their own way. And if you ever Google that, oh my goodness, just prepare yourself. I did a video on it on my YouTube channel and got so many abusive emails and death threats and you name it from men and complete trolls. In fact, funny enough, even though I'm all about empowering men and educating women, I get so much hate from men, like, and it's just ridiculous, right? And one of my good female friends who actually coaches men, she's quite a well-known coach in America for men. She gets even more than me. And I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. Hang on, you're tearing this woman down, and she's actually trying to help you guys. So well, that's a whole other conversation. But I think that there's a hurt generation on both sides. I think that the Me Too movement wasn't originally anything toxic. You know, it's something that needed to be spoke about as long as it was done from a place of honesty. There's obviously a lot of dishonest women who went out there and claimed that they got raped or that they got sexually abused, and they weren't. And they abused that whole movement. However, majority of women out there had experienced that. I mean, I know I've experienced it. So but again, it's been blown out of proportion because of other people's experiences or one or two bad people that then gave it a bad rap, and then combine that with everything else, and it just becomes, men versus women. And it's really sad because I see it constantly. I see it especially on my YouTube channel with the amount of men and women just bickering at each other or trolling me or trolling someone else who's trying to help solve this issue. And hurt people. And it's time, I think, for the world to kind of just grow up, to kind of put our differences aside and understand, okay, how can a man bring value? How can a woman bring value equally and individually in order to be able to move us forward and have that harmony once again, or even for the first time ever, if it even existed before?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through something like that. I would imagine it would have been awful to experience. And it's amazing of what you're doing right now, helping people in relationships after everything that you've been through. So thank you for sharing that.
That's okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit about love and the idea of finding love and people knowing when they're in love. How are you supposed to know when you love someone?
It's funny. I was actually talking to my husband about this the other day. I was like, do you know what it's like to be in love? And we were asking a friend of ours as well, because he's with a girl, and I was like, okay, he loves that girl, but he's not in love with her. And maybe it's because I've experienced both, and also I have lots of clients, and just, I guess maybe I'm in this industry so I can identify it straight away. But, I think first knowing what love is really key to working out, okay, am I in love with this person, or am I infatuated with this person? Or do I just have a love for this person, but I'm not in love with them? In love and falling in love with someone has several different stages. And it actually has all those three in there as well. So it even becomes more confusing. When you first meet someone, you have that natural sort of infatuation period where you just want to see each other, you're crazy about each other. The chemistry is really high. The attachment, chemical oxytocin is being released. It's just like they're your person. It's like a drug to your system. Now, whether that grows into love, real love, is something that you will only know over time. And that's where you're able to go into other phases where you understand their faults, but you have grace towards them. You can't imagine your life without them. You start to plan everything with them. There's a high level of attachment there. The thing is, just because we fall in love with someone doesn't mean we're falling in love with the right person. And, I know that I've fallen in love with narcissists. The love was real, absolutely, but it wasn't a healthy relationship. So, and having just a love for someone is you have respect for them, you like them, but you're not necessarily thinking of them as your person, or you can actually imagine a life without them. I believe when you're really in love with someone, for me, the key is you can't imagine your life without them. You dream about them. If you're a dreamer, you think about them constantly. You're always wondering how you can win them over and do things for them, and you see their potential.
Yeah. In a relationship, if you fear or you constantly think about that person with someone else, or you begin dreaming that they're cheating on you, is it, I guess, messaging that you're not with the right person?
I think, no, not necessarily, because our fears aren't always an indication that of the truth. A lot of the time our fears are lies, to be honest, and it sets us up for this mindset that that can actually self-sabotage us if we listen to our fears. For me, dreams are a different thing, though. I'm somebody, I remember like this with my ex years ago before I met my husband. It was over Christmas time and I had 2 dreams in a row, but I'm someone that I have dreams, like I have visions and they come true. So for me, I know that my dreams mean something. And I dreamt that he was sleeping with someone, and he was, and it was so real to me. It was just like I woke up crying and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I found out a few weeks later that he had. So it really depends on who you are. The more in touch you are with yourself and your way to feel certain things, whether it is you get a certain feeling or whether you have a vision or you dream about something, don't ignore that. Absolutely. I think that if you have a general fear that somebody is going to cheat on you or something like that, ask yourself, okay, instead of just reacting out of that, why do I have this fear? Is it something that this person is constantly doing, like hiding their phone, being secretive? Things aren't adding up. You're just getting this weird sort of vibe from them. There's a communication breakdown. Maybe your husband's neglecting you. Maybe you've gone really distant. What is producing that fear? Is it you? Is it something that you have going on where basically you've been cheated on in the past, you just haven't gotten over that trauma, and so you bring it into each relationship and you kind of poke holes in things in order to try and work out whether or not they're being faithful to you because you have your own trust issues? Is it them, something that they're doing repetitively, or is it circumstances? Circumstances such as he's at work and there's a female colleague who always messages him after work hours, or you're in a long distance relationship so you don't get to see each other as much. If you're able to identify that reason for that fear, it will help you help you have a better indication of why that fear is there and what you need to do about it.
Yeah, okay. I want to now suggest a few different scenarios, and if you can just offer your best advice in terms of supporting that person that's going through that, or just around that conversation. So if a partner does find out that someone has cheated on them, should you stay in the relationship, or is it time to move on?
I think not reacting, but choosing to respond is the best thing to do. When you react, you can regret. When you choose to respond, at least you've had time to reflect. So just because a relationship has had unfaithfulness doesn't mean that it necessarily has to end. And I have seen many people repair their relationships and marriage and actually had it become better because one person was unfaithful. Cheating is never, ever justified. Obviously, it's something we want to prevent, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that relationship has to end. It really does depend on the circumstance. Depends what happens after the cheating. If someone goes out and sleeps with a whole lot of prostitutes, that's obviously a very different thing, and that's a psychological problem going on, as opposed to someone that maybe had an affair because they felt neglected in their marriage.
Yeah. If someone ghosts you, or this term of being ghosted, what should we do?
Ghosting is something that you just need to let that person die in your life, literally, and let them become a ghost. And it's not necessarily a reflection of you. It's ghosting's more to do with the other person. However, it is an opportunity to learn and to grow. And there's no point trying to reach out to them or trying to get an answer. Closure is something that you choose to do by simply deciding, I don't need to keep engaging with that person.
Yeah. What is your advice to someone that in a relationship, one side of the relationship is infatuation and the other is not interested?
Yeah, that's obviously really a difficult place to be in. I think that there's an imbalance there. If one person is highly infatuated and the other person is not interested, that can become quite toxic. I think that the infatuated person needs to pull back a little bit and work on why they feel infatuated with that person. Is because they're unemotionally available, that they want to keep giving, and that they become so focused on them. And if the person is uninterested and giving access to themselves to that infatuated person, again, why is that happening? Is it because they just want to have someone there to idolize them because they're scared to actually be vulnerable or let somebody in themselves, or is it because they're convenient? Definitely a time for reflection on both ends.
In a relationship, what advice can you offer a couple or a partner or someone that's looking at their relationship going, I hear this, I love the person I'm with, but I'm not in love with them?
I did a video on this on my YouTube channel because I had this wife email me saying, my husband literally said to me, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. I believe that relationships, you can fall in and out of love with the person over and over again. It goes through stages. And just because you don't necessarily feel something isn't an indication that that relationship should be over. Being in love with someone and staying in love with them is two different things. Staying in love with them is something that requires maintenance, and it's something that you can do as long as you're consciously aware of what you need to do. And it's a process to fall back in love with someone, but it's not to say that you can't because you were before. Obviously, it depends if that person has changed a lot, but it is something that could be explored rather than just expired.
Yeah. What can someone do if, I know in a lot of workplaces or even in family dynamics, that a lot of people in their outside of the relationship get involved with the relationship. Can that impact the two people's connection and their relationship?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've seen marriages break up because the mother-in-law was just a nightmare. Um, Culturally speaking as well, I see this a lot with certain cultures where the parents are really, really strict with their daughter. So the guy just can't handle that, or the mother-in-law is just so clingy with her son, and the son just does everything to put the mother in instead of his wife, as a priority, is something that breaks down relationships. I think that everyone loves to have their opinion. Everyone is obviously coming from hopefully a point of love, but not always. Boundaries are incredibly healthy in a relationship, and need to be put down from the start with family, especially if you know what your family's like or friends. But both people need to be on the same page, like the couple need to be on the same page when it comes to those boundaries. If you've got the wife going, well, why don't you have more boundaries with your mother-in-law? And then the husband using that against his wife, saying, well, you don't like my mother and how dare you? And then the mother playing victim. That's where obviously it gets really messy, and it usually doesn't work.
Yeah, wow. And what about the women that, or even some men may have lists as well of that they've got to tick off when they find someone they want to potentially have a relationship with, and they go that that person doesn't meet this standard? Should we stick to our lists, and should the typical man tick off everything on the list?
You know what? I had like a 3-page list and I literally got everything. However, my requirements weren't based on superficial things or things that were unrealistic. I think what's key here is that, does that list first have the fundamentals? Does it have what we need, not necessarily what we want? So for example, if you have a very specific height, he needs to be 6'2", and you meet a guy who's 5'11", but he has everything else that will give you a healthy relationship and you're still attracted to him, are you going to write him off just because he doesn't have those couple of extra inches? You know, understanding yourself and what you need in order to feel fulfilled, and also understanding what a relationship needs in order to be healthy. Those should be the priority things on your list.
Yeah. And finally, a little bit about you. Have you found your man? Are you in love?
Yes. So we've been together for 7 years. and it's almost 7.5 years now. We're married. We're expecting our first baby in August. So you can't see it now, but I'm very huge underneath. I'm hiding it. And like I said, I went from 10 years of brokenness, rejection, always had everyone say, oh, you're such a great girl. Like, you'll meet someone, you're so pretty, you'll find someone, the usual sort of stuff. And you're like, well, where is he? Like, hello.
Yeah.
And then once I did my work, literally, like I reached my breaking point. I reached out and got help from a professional, turned my life around, and within 4 months met my future husband on a Valentine's Day shoot, and knew in that instant that that was my future husband. I even turned to the cameraman. I said, I'm going to marry that man. And 9 months later, we got engaged. So,
wow. So finding the one and love at first sight is real then.
It can be, but I didn't rush into it. We definitely connected. I'd done the work. He'd done the work. I'm actually his first love. He'd had like lots of girls before me, but never in love. And we still did things properly. So I guess that's why we were able to accelerate the process, because we were just on the same page and we handled it so maturely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so happy that you found the one and the love. It's a beautiful story. And to also start that conversation around what true love is, I find that's phenomenal, because as you said, it gets not the rap that it should get in today's world. So thank you so much for joining us today and starting that conversation. Where can we find you?
So the best way to find me is probably my YouTube channel. It's just Renee Slansky. All my social media is just my name, Renee Slansky. You can check in with me on Instagram. I'm quite active on Instagram and my YouTube channel. Or I do have a private Facebook group for the girls out there who just want some support with dating advice, love, a community, and that's called Worth the Wait.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, and good luck with the delivery of your newborn. Do you know the gender?
Yeah, it's a boy.
Oh, congrats. Oh, well,
Thanks.
hopefully all goes well. And once again, thank you for joining us in starting the conversation on another Secret Sunday session. And thank you everyone out there for joining us. We will catch you next time. Thank you.